All right, we're talking about switching between standard and slope-intercept forms today. So you're going to add this to your notes. So you're going to add this to your notes probably later on in the week. We're going to take a little quiz on this stuff. So we want to go ahead and make sure you get all this down and ask questions when necessary, okay? So let's talk about examples of standard forms and slope-intercept forms. Here are three of each that you want to copy down into your notes. And as you're copying these down, you're going to notice the differences between the two. So take a moment and go ahead and copy these down. So as you have these written down, I want you to notice the differences between standard forms, all these here are standard forms, and slope-intercept forms. And so we're going to write down what we notice here. Now notice on the standard form, you should notice that, look, all of these here, all of them have the x and the y on the same side, right? They're both on the left-hand side of the equal sign. X and y, x and y. Versus slope-intercept, y is the only one that's on the left-hand side. So that's one of the biggest differences so far. So far we want to write down that, look, x and y are on the same side for standard form, and slope-intercept, y is by itself on the left. Okay, that's one of the big things. The next big thing is that you'll notice that on standard form, the coefficients of the variables, the numbers in front of the variables, they're all whole numbers, right? Negative or positive, doesn't matter. But we don't have any fractions as coefficients. So that's going to be important for standard form. Versus over here, I could have a fraction as my slope. I could even have a fraction as my intercept, and that wouldn't change anything. It's fine. So those are the two main differences. Standard form, you have x and y on the same side. Slope-intercept, y is only on one side. And then also for standard form, there's no fractions as a coefficient. And on slope-intercept, fractions could be the coefficients for x, right? You could actually have fractions as the intercepts here too. I'm just going to go back real quick. If you recall, having standard form makes it super easy to find your intercepts, right? We block out one of the letters and we say, hey, the x-intercept here would have to be 3 because you divide both sides by 4 to get that. Or the y-intercept would be 4 here. Over here, these are pretty easy. X-intercept would be 5 and y-intercept would be 5. On this last one here, the x-intercept would be -5 and the y-intercept would be 10. So those are the two differences. So that sometimes it's better for us to have in standard form and we can find those intercepts much faster. But if I'm asking for a slope, I'd have to take a look at it as a different way. And then on the flip side, there's some times that we want it in slope-intercept form. Like if I want to graph, sometimes it's easier to graph here. Sometimes it's easier to graph with these. Remember, this is going to be my intercept. Just like I said before, the y-intercept here was 4 and it shows up right there as that number, right? And this is your slope. So when you graph things, you could start here and move from there. Okay, so what today we're going to do is we're going to practice moving from standard form to slope-intercept and back. So we're going to change from one to another. I'm going to start you off with a nice easy one. So this is called standard form, right? We can see that the x and y are both on the same side and there are no fractions here. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to get y by itself. In order to get y by itself, I need to remove this -3x. So I do that by adding the opposite, adding 3x to both sides. Okay, and I just wrote the steps over here. Get y by itself by moving the -3x. How do I move it? I add the opposite, right? Okay, so I do that. If I bring 3x over, now y is by itself. So that's what I wanted. And these two, remember, I can't add together. It does not turn into 10x. One has a variable, one does not, so we have to leave them separate. And that's it. That's called slope-intercept form. That's my slope, and that's my intercept. All right? Let's try another one. Oh, once again, I have standard form. Okay, x and y, same side, no fractions. Okay, and I want to get y by itself. So this one's going to be a medium one because I've got to do two things. So first thing I do is, you guessed it, get rid of this -6x. I add 6x to both sides. I use the word isolate. Isolate the 2y. Get it by itself by moving the -6x. And how do we do that? We add 6x. So that goes away. That you can, in essence, just cross those out if you wanted to in your notes. These two cannot be combined, so I write them separately. And the 2y, I just write 2y. Okay? But so far, I've gotten the first step done, but it doesn't just say y here. It says 2y. So my next step is to divide. I divide by the coefficient 2. Divide everything by 2, and there you go. Y has to be by itself, so that's what I end up with. And there's my slope-intercept. This gets simplified, and this gets simplified. Okay, so that's a medium type of question. And then it comes on to my next one. This one's slightly more challenging, and we're going to see why. So once again, it's in standard form. We know y. we say, look, I got to get this by itself. Isolate the y. So how do I get that by itself? Well, I got to get rid of this 7x. I subtract 7x on both sides. I end up with this here. Y is not by itself, so just like the example before, I divide by the coefficient, whatever's in front. So I divide by this -3. I'm going to divide all these numbers by -3. Now here's the part that gets a little tricky that sometimes students make mistakes on, so be careful. Okay, so this right here turns into y, but notice here, a negative divided by a negative gives me a positive, so I get 7/3 x. And a positive divided by a negative turns negative, -11/3. You don't have to make it a mixed number, just leave it in proper fraction is perfectly fine, and that would be slope-intercept. Okay, I want you to try some. Okay, we're going to start off with an easy, medium, and hard one, or not really hard, but more challenging. And you can take a look at the 3 previous examples to kind of show you this. Now, for those that aren't listening to this, I'm telling you right now, there's a secret code word for this week's quiz. The secret code word is orange. Don't tell anybody, but I'm really trying to get people to listen to my videos and not just watch them. So think of the word orange when I ask for the secret code word in this week's quiz. Okay, moving on. Try it out. I'm going to pause it. You pause it. Try it out. See what you get. Now that you're back, this is what you should have. Subtract 2x on both sides, y is by itself, and there you go, slope-intercept. Let's try another. Okay, here we go. This is a medium one. Try it out by yourself, pause it, and here's your answer. There you go. That's what I got. I subtracted the 4x, right, to get this by itself. 4x alone, -10 over here, and then divide by -2. This one came out to be nice and friendly with my numbers, and that's why it's a medium question. Here's my last one here on this type. This one I call more challenging. Try it out. Let's see what you get. And here's my answer. Take a look how I got there. I added the x. I divided by 4. And remember, there's that ninja 1 in front of the x, so we have to put 1 over 4x and then 9 over 4. And we leave it alone. And that's it. You got it. All right, I've got a couple more minutes of video left, and this is going from slope-intercept back to standard form. So this is how we do this. All right, so this is slope-intercept. Y is by itself, and I've got x over here and the constant over here as well. So I got to get x and y on the same side. So this is an easy one. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go the opposite of -x is to add x. So if I add x to both sides, boom, done. That's standard form. X and y are on one side, and the constant is on the other. And I'm done with that. So that's an easy question. Let's try another. This I would consider a medium type of question because, look, I got to get this -3x, because x is here, onto the other side. How do I do that? Well, I have to subtract I have to subtract 1/3 x to both sides. I do that so that these will go away, right? They cancel out. And I'm left with something that looks like this. But remember, I don't want to have any fractions as part of a standard form. So what I need to do is I need to eliminate the fractions by multiplying by the common denominator, which in this case, the denominators are 3, 1, and 1. We don't see them, but there's 1s underneath these here. So if I multiply everything by 3, kind of fraction busting, if you will, this is what happens. This 3 times -1 over 3 turns into just -1. 3 times y is 3y, and 3 times 2 is 6. I'm distributing that 3 to all 3 terms, and that's standard form. Here's my last one. This was going to be a little bit more challenging. Go through the same steps. Here's that x. I got to move that thing, so subtract 3/4 x to both sides. That eliminates my 3/4 x on the right. I'm left with this. So close. I have x and y on one side. That's great, but I have fractions. So once again, I got to multiply by the common denominator. In this case is a 4, right? Because it's 4. This is a 1, and this is a 1 underneath. So multiply everything by 4. So 4 times -3 is -12. Divided by 4 gives me that -3. 4 times y is 4y. 4 times 7 is 28. That's it. That's standard form. Okay, last 30 seconds of this video is going to have you try these out. Start with an easy, then go to medium, and then go to challenging. So I'll pause each time. You try it out and see what you get. Okay, there's your first one. X was on this side. Got to subtract it to both sides. There it is. Standard form. Okay, next one. Try it out. This is what you should have. You added 1/2 x to both sides. You multiply by the common denominator 2. And this is your resulting answer. And for the last one, there it is. Try it out. Great. If you did this correctly, you added 1/5 x to both sides. You realized that the common denominator was 5. multiply everything by 5, and there's your final answer.